So a lot of you guys always hit me up with questions about multiple things, whether it's sports photography, how does this lens operate, what do you think about sharpness, what do you think about this focal length, this, that, and the other. One of the biggest things that I always get asked questions about is this whole concept of street photography. What should I do? What shouldn't I do? Does this really matter? Does that really not matter? Is this a big deal? Is that a big deal? What's the best camera? What's the best lens? What's the best focal length? And while you can search the internet and find a lot of these things from people that know a lot more than me and put a lot more time into the craft of street photography, at least understanding it, than I do, I'd like to share with you a few tips that I believe you're probably not going to hear that often if you've never even heard them before when it comes to street photography. Today's video is sponsored by Aura. The first tip that I have when it comes to street photography, and I don't hear a lot of people talk about this, but I think everyone needs to understand this, is understand your photometry, your photometry, your photometry, however you pronounce it. Understand the settings in your camera. And what I like to do is lean into exposing for the highlights. And let me explain, especially on digital, what this means. So the photometry modes on your camera, there could be about 3 to 4 or 5 different ones. It depends what camera manufacturer you come from. And all it does is it's metering your image, your exposure. And this is something we rely on. When you're looking in your OVF or your EVF, usually you have a light meter on the left-hand side telling you where you're at. Perfect exposure, whether you're overexposed by a stop, underexposed by a stop, etc., etc. And a lot of people have a specific look they look for. Me personally, I love to meter towards about 1/3 of a stop underexposed because digital cameras do a lot better job recovering shadow than film did. So if digital cameras have a bigger issue with recovering highlights, but they do better with shadows, it's better for me to lean to the darker side for the way that I edit, just so I can make sure that I'm getting a correct image and a correct post edit every single time. Now what that entails though, and what's important for me, is there are different modes that meter different ways here on my Fujifilm X Pro 3, and each one of them will do something different, and I have a specific one that I go to so that I can make sure my images are exposed the way that I need them to be. Because if you're on the wrong setting, if you're on the wrong mode, it could really impact the way that your image looks. So the first mode we're going to talk about is the mode called multi, and what this is doing is it's taking a look at your composition and then going from there, seeing how highlights and shadows are weighted along with colors to tell you what kind of light distribution you have, and it gives you a metering from there. This is something that Fujifilm actually recommends to a lot of people, meaning that it's what's set up on default and what on their website they say should be your default for almost every single situation. This is something that when you're in good light, in great conditions, it's probably something you should fall back and revert to every single time. That's multi. The next metering to discuss is called center weighted, and it is exactly like it sounds. It's taking your whole image, but it's putting more of an onus on what's in the center whenever it's metering. Now, this isn't exactly looking at something that is very minute, the subject right in front of you, like in the next mode we're going to discuss, spot. But if you imagine yourself in your different columns, you have your left third, you have your right third, you have your center, etc., etc. The center, the whole section, is what's actually being metered for more. Now, it is still taking into account things on your left, things on your right, but the biggest thing to remember is the fact that right here in the center, that's what it's being weighted for. That's where your image is getting its metering from. The next mode is called spot. And spot is exactly what it sounds like. You are actually getting only a 2% spot in the center, in the very, very center of the image. Boom, like this, a little 2% spot out of the whole frame. That's all that's being metered. And this is actually good for, again, someone if you're shooting in a high dynamic range situation, or you can go to this if you have someone who's in shadow and your background's completely blown out, but it's compensating for that, so your subject is still dark, but you don't care about it. All you have to do is put in spot metering, and it's only metering, or it's metering specifically for the 2% little dot in the center that would be on your subject. This is one that I hardly ever use unless it's in studio, but it is one that whenever you are using it is very effective. The last one that's available, which is the one that I use, is called average. And this is actually different than multi, because what this does is this is getting a reading of every single thing, and average does the best job because it's not looking at colors and just looking at lighting, of making sure that I preserve my highlights. What I like to do in average, and this is where it actually shines, is I like to shoot in black and white and then from there just call it good, because I know that I'm never gonna have any completely huge blown out highlights here or completely muddied shadows here, because average also takes into account just the light that is in the image, period. So if your image is about 75% shadow and then it has a 25% light, multi will try to go and take that and say, okay, most of it's shadow, so let me bump up the shadow. That way this light over here, it doesn't really need to be taken care of because it's not the main focus. In average, what it does is says, okay, here's your highlights here on your 25%. Here's your 75% shadow. I want a good even split on both of those instead of weighting it towards one, because the camera isn't assuming anymore that your subject is only in the shadow and you don't have anything outside in the white that needs to be dynamic. That's the one that I choose to shoot with street photography. It's the one that's worked the best for me. I shoot in black and white whenever I'm out shooting street so that I focus less on color and more on composition. And average is the one that always gives me better reach whenever it comes to highlights and reach when it comes to shadow and pulling those up and using the full dynamic range of this X Pro 3 and the sensor. Have you ever accidentally given your social security card to a scammer at the mall and then forgot to get it back before you left? That's crazy, right? Or have you ever just been on the internet and made an online transaction ever? You see, fraud and identity theft, it happens way more often than you would believe. So much, in fact, that it's the highest growing crime in America, and every 14 seconds, someone new has their identity stolen. And that's why I'm excited to partner with today's sponsor, Aura. Aura is identity theft protection, fraud monitoring, VPN service, password management, and antivirus software wrapped up into one service for an amazing price. Aura goes beyond the surface and it dives in to see if your emails, your passwords, your social security, your phone number, any of your critical information is seen on the dark web. And even for myself, have seen where my passwords are not only strong, but where certain companies have had security breaches and my own personal email actually has already been put on the dark web. Now imagine the sinking feeling of you being one of these people, trying to log into your email, you can't get in because someone changed the password, now you're getting all these bank notifications that you just bought $50,000 worth of Bazooka bubblegum and someone bought their dog a car in your name. That is the worst, and Aura can help protect you from that. Protect your family and yourself by going to aura.com/drosa or check the links down below. And if you do so right now, you'll get 2 weeks free trial to see if any of your information is in the dark web. Don't just be another victim of identity theft. Take preventative action and take it with Aura. The next tip that I have is just to use auto ISO. And I don't mean shutter priority, and I don't mean aperture priority to where you adjust this one area and the other two are on auto and they're working with each other. I mean specifically just use auto ISO. I think it is the best way to go. It gives you the most control. It keeps you from still having to be in manual mode the whole time. Because one thing you'll notice if you're shooting completely fully manual for street is sometimes you are in a situation to where maybe clouds come overhead or maybe someone walks in the shadow or maybe, XYZ can happen to where it can mess up your exposure. You had your exposure set for this really sunny situation. You turn in an alley and now it's dark and now you're scrambling to decide, okay, am I gonna throw down my shutter speed? Oh wait, it was already at 1/60th of a second. If I go any lower, I'm gonna be having to be super duper still, or I might have to crank my aperture down. Okay, well now I might miss. It's just easier if you have your auto ISO on, because I can leave my aperture on f8 at all time and I can adjust my shutter speed to what I want. If cars are driving by and I wanna catch that, I can go to 1/1000th. If people are riding bikes by me, I can go to 1/500th. If people are walking or jogging, I can go to 1/250th or 1/125th. And it's that simple. I can stick in my f8 to f11. I can switch back and forth between the two, but at the same time, I have the freedom to adjust my shutter speed, and my ISO is being compensated in camera every single time in association with the average metering. The next tip that I have seems like a no-brainer because it is a no-brainer to me, but to a lot of people, it's not. And that is strictly, listen, stop taking ND filters with you and just shoot anywhere from f8 to f11 for your street photography. Listen, if you have a lens that is equipped for street photography, meaning it's kind of wide angled, f8 to f11 is going to get you everything in focus. And at some point, having your image in focus, telling a story and learning how to layer is a big part of growth for every single photographer. And this whole idea of bokeh and bokeh horrorness and a bokeh monster kind of puts a cripple hammer on people's creativity, because people believe, okay, if I don't have a shallow depth of field, I don't have a pretty story, or I'm not taking a great picture. And it's actually the opposite. In street photography, your favorite street photographers, the Gordon Parks, the Nacho Lopez's, the Henri Cartier-Bressons, the Volandis, the Jason from Grainy Days, all these people, the reason why their images are so impactful is because they're telling the story beyond just the subject, or beyond just one or two people, or beyond just one little element in it, and they're telling a story of a whole situation happening in the world. Start thinking about it. Try it. Just shoot every once in a while. Shoot one at f8. Tell the person stay there. Then stop down to your f1.2 so you can get that nice creamy bokeh. Listen, I understand the appeal and the draw to shooting wide open portraits and how it looks so dreamy, it looks so beautiful. But at the same time, when it comes to street photography, I even hear people who want to shoot at f2, at f2.8, at f4 only, because they still want shallow depth of field. They want to get their subject and things be blurred out. But when it comes to street photography, there are no rules, but there are some things that I would just recommend that look really, really good and can help you grow and increase your knowledge as well as your creativity whenever it comes to shooting street photography. And for me, the biggest one is stop bringing an ND filter so you can still shoot at 1.2. Shoot at f8, shoot at f11, get all the information. The more information, the better, and learn how to layer your images. My next tip may seem crazy, but it's very simple. If you can, just shoot in black and white. And now this is kind of predicated on, number one, will your camera allow you to see black and white in your viewfinder? And number two, can your camera shoot RAW plus JPEG? And if it can, if you have a Fujifilm camera like this, I just recommend shooting in black and white. Spend more time focusing on your composition. Spend more time focusing on your composition and how you're playing with light than colors. Listen, the colors are gonna be there, but a lot of times we allow colors to really just take over every single thing we're doing. We want things to pop. We want to pump up the saturation. We want something to look like it came from a Leica. We want Canon colors. We want this and that. We want to use Skittles from Frono's Best, or whatever his name is, Jared Poland. We want to use his Skittle preset. So what we do is we nuke our own images, basically, by adding in all this extra color, and we put this idea that, okay, if I'm shooting in color, it'll get a response, it'll be popping, it'll be this, that, and the other. But if you just allow yourself to in the field, you can still edit the color in post, but to focus on composition and shadow by shooting in black and white, taking the color out of the mix, it truly does change up your whole situation. I get it. I love Fujifilm's presets. I love to use a portrait preset that I have in here that is similar to 400H. I love using my 400H preset. I love using my Kodachrome preset. What I love using more than anything, especially when shooting street, is black and white, for the simple reason of it takes away every single thing. It takes away every single distraction that I could have. It takes away me focusing on color, and it makes me focus on my composition, the story that I'm telling, and the layers that I have in my image, along with the shadows. For me, it has completely made my street photography better, much more enjoyable, and whenever I bring it home and I'm looking at the raws and I'm finally seeing the color, it just makes it so amazing seeing when I do get colors that pop, and I never really am missing this whole idea of, well, did I get enough color? Did I get this cool teal in there? Did I get this cool orange in there? Did I get this cool yellow? Because honestly, the feeling of coming home and being surprised by it is way better than the feeling of, ooh, I know I got that. The last tip that I have in this video for street photography tips, it's one that, again, I don't really hear a lot of people talk about. My boy Dorian Coleman's touched on it a little bit, but he's the only person I've heard talk about it. Stop taking yourself too seriously and just learn to smile. Listen, I get it, like street photography is an art, and I know we have this like idea in our head that art has to be taken seriously, and art is like, you know, an artist is, I guess, mysterious and moody and all these things, but stop taking yourself seriously. Y'all, street photography is literally walking around and taking photos of everyday, average day-to-day life. Yeah, no one can probably repeat that image, but there will be an opportunity for someone to take a similar image like that in another city, state, country, whatever. Have fun with it. If you don't feel like shooting, don't shoot. If you don't feel like creating something, don't create. If you don't feel comfortable shooting, you know, a certain area or taking photo of a certain situation, then don't do it. Don't put yourself outside of your comfort zone. Start working towards that, but have fun when you're doing it. Smile, enjoy yourself. When you start taking yourself too seriously, start getting frustrated with yourself. You know, start getting frustrated with yourself on the street. Stop smiling because you want to be incognito and don't draw attention. Wear this all black and you know, the whole thing that was a fad a while ago. Street photographers wear all black, a black hat, you're wearing a black jacket, you have a blacked out camera. Don't take yourself too seriously, dude. Because at the end of the day, the photos are for you. They're for you first and foremost. Stop taking stuff for people on Instagram. Stop putting on fake personas. Listen, anyone can be a photographer. Anyone can do street photography. There are people that go and they'll record a fight on the street and post it to World Star. Guess what? They're a street videographer. People that are taking photos of people, doing backflips and failing, or people taking photos of Elmo at Times Square. Guess what? If they took it on their phone, doesn't matter. They're a street photographer, basically. Street photography is one of the easiest things to do, and it's free to do after you get your camera. So don't take yourself too seriously. Go out there and create, have fun, and enjoy yourself. Don't overthink it, and listen, don't put too much into it. Okay, don't burn yourself out of your love for photography because you're out there walking every single day and not happy with the images you're getting because you're not getting great engagement online. Don't do that to yourself. Have fun, enjoy yourself, don't take it too seriously. But that's it for my video. Those are all my tips and tricks, I guess, for street photography. Just some things I haven't heard people talk about. Hope you guys enjoy it. And with that being said, take it light, but take it. Have a good one.